Hello, Wazobia Code developers. Welcome back to Wazobia Code. The last video introduced you to React context. This video will introduce you to React forms. Well, forms in React are made exactly like forms in HTML, with a little change. So in this video, we will use forms directly in our recipe sharing app by creating a login form and use that to get the username context. Let us begin. So here we are on our recipe sharing application rather. This is the code and this is the page. So we have the home, you can click on the recipe, we can have recipe don't enjoy, recipe steps, recipe ingredients. So what we want to do is that currently done is default. Everyone is named Don. But then we want to create some functionality where there'll be a login page and where you put in your data into that login page, and then this name would come from that login page. Let us begin. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create this login page of ours. So let's go over here, src, create a new file. Let's call it login.jsx. Okay, open it, and then obviously we are going to do export default function login. Okay, and so in our form we want to have a username and a password. Okay, so we create states for this username and this password. So let's do that. So over here, let's do import useState. And then create the username and the password useState. Okay, so we have our username and password. Now what we want to do right now is just return a div with a h1 that says login. Okay, that's good. So let's make sure we can see this by just importing it in the home and then putting it in there. So import, we want to import login from, okay, and then let's just put that inside here. So if you go to the home, what you see, login. Okay, so we see login everywhere. That's because we put login inside our map. We don't want to put login inside our recipes.map. No, we want it outside. We want a single login. Okay, we go over here. Yeah, we have a single login. Good. So now let's create our login form. So we have our famous form element, and then remember on submit we want to do a function. What function should we do? We're going to create a function called handle submit. We'll have that over there for now. Let's give it a class name so we can style it in CSS. Let's call it login form. Okay, let's create the function over here. Right now, let's just make a brief function, nothing too special. Handle submit. So function const handle submit event. And if you remember from our event handling, for functions, you have to prevent default action. And how do you prevent default action? Event.prevent default. Okay, so we go back to that later. So now let's create the input label for the username. So basically label HTML4 username, and then we're going to put our input box inside. So the input box is going to be input type text, and we want on change. Remember this, when it changes we want to do grab e, and then we want to set username e.target.value, and then close the input box. Okay, so we do that, and then we want to do one for password as well. So that's basically going to be almost the exact same thing. So HTML4 password, and we want this to be password. Okay, input type text. Actually, this is going to be input type password, so it's going to be hidden on change e does set password e.target.value, and then we have our label again as well. So we come over here and we see username and password. Let's actually add some a line break in between the both of them, so we can just do that with a vr. Okay, so we have login, username and password. So now we've created the form, and we can do, after the submit is done, we can just alert you submitted form. Okay, now there's one more thing we're missing, and what we are missing is the submit button for the form. So we come over here, create our submit button. So button type submit, and give it a class name. Let's call class name submit button, and then login. Okay, let's give our input a class name as well, in case we want to style it. Class name, let's call it input field. We're going to do the same thing for the other input field. Give it the same class name on change, class name input field. Okay, and then let's give our labels a class name as well. So our label tags, we give them the class name input label, and our other label tag, we give it the class name input label. Okay, so this is how our form is going to look like. This is how it looks like. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do really is that now we are going to alert the value of the username and password after we submit the form. So we can do some alerts that does that. So we can do alerts form submitted, username is, so we could alert. I'm going to use backticks form submitted with username and password. Okay, so backticks allow you to basically call variables inside a string. So that's how you do it. You do the backtick $ curly brackets with the variable name. So now when we go into our form over here, we do our username, done. We do our password, done. Login, form submitted, username done, and password done. Okay, so now that is basically how you create a form, and that is how you add some event handling to basically handle submissions of the form. So the next thing we're going to do really now is that we're going to add some style into this form. Let's make our form look good. That's the reason why I put all the class names. So let's create our style. So over here, add a file login.css. Okay, I already created the style, so I'm just going to paste that in. Then inside here, we are just going to import that. Import login, import ./login.css. When you go into our form, there you go. Let's not say that. It looks good. Now our login form looks a lot better. Okay, good. And actually, let's take this to a page of its own. Let's take our login form to a page on its own. Let it not be with the home. So how do you take it to a page of its own? Well, first, we create a route for it. How do you create a route for it? You go into the app.jsx, you import it, import login from login, and then you create a route for it. Route path, let's the path just be login. The element should be login. Close that. Close that. Okay. And then remember we had this navigation bar that we created. So let's add a form of navigating from the navigation bar to our form. So link to equals to login class name nav item log in. Okay, make sure I get it. Yeah, so that's the same name. So we go over here, we should see on our navigation bar we have home and login. Let's delete the form from home. Okay, good. Now the form is in there. When you click on login, you go directly to the form. Okay, good. So now this is where we start to add the functionality. And what functionality am I talking about? I'm talking about the functionality that allows you to put the username inside here, and then the username is going to basically be shown here. So how do you do that? How do you get the value that's submitted into this and then you make that to replace your context? Well, let's look at our context again. Remember, every single page on the app has access to our context, and login is on the app. So login has access to our context. So we can actually use the context inside here, inside our login. So first we can import it. So import use auth from context, and then we can actually go ahead and use it. So const user set user equals to use auth. Okay, let me just go make sure that that's what they were called. So we go to our context, and yeah, user and set user. Okay, so we go into our login, user and set user, and then if we come here and then we want login and we want to use the value of user, that works. Login done. That's our user. Let's ask ourselves the question, what is set user? Yeah, let's go back. Set user is the function that you use to set the value of user in our provider. So what happens if when we submit the form in our login, what happens if we choose to set the user from our auth context to the user that was given to us in our form? So what stops us from doing set user? And what user are we making it? Username. Okay, let's put this under the alert. So let's do this. Okay, so let's go. Username David. Password doesn't matter. So we refresh the page. Nothing changes. Why doesn't anything change? That doesn't make any sense. We're using set user. Well, the reason why nothing changes is because value. What did we pass down as value? we only passed user down as value. We didn't pass down set user. So all we need to do is pass down set user as well. So set user. So now we have passed down user and set user as values in our context. So now in login, we can actually grab set user properly. And then now when we click the submit, we can actually use the set user function that we grabbed. So let's go over here again. Username, David. Password. It worked. Username, Samuel. Password. It worked. We go back to home. Welcome, Samuel. We go to view recipe. A recipe Samuel will enjoy. We go to login. So now what's the purpose of password? What exactly can we do with password? Well, right now we can add an if statement to look at the password. So we can basically do if the password is equal to a certain value, then set the username. But if the password isn't in that certain value, make the username be guessed, and then maybe display a div that says sorry, and then alert, sorry, your password is wrong. So let's do that. So if password, let our password for now just be password. If password equals to password, perfect. Then what do we want to do? Then we want to set username, else set user to guest. Let's call them guest, and then we're going to alert password is incorrect. So now the user logs in, they put their username and password. If the password is equal to password, then we set the username to their username. Else we tell them password is incorrect. Oh, an error here. Guest is going to be a string and it's not a variable. Okay, so we go over here, refresh the page, username done, password, not password, login. Password, not password is incorrect. So we're now a guest. Username done, password, login worked. Done. Actually, let's add an alert to let the user know that login worked. Alert user. Let's do backticks as well. So let's say welcome and then $sign username. So let's welcome the user if their login is correct. So we can now go over here, done password, welcome, done something else, password is incorrect, and then it goes back to guest. And then if we also wanted to make this a bit more fancy, inside our context, we can start it off as guest. So anyone who visits our page is a guest, and then after they log in, then they can see their name everywhere. So we can now go over here, login guest. Everywhere is going to say guest, a recipe guest to enjoy. We go to login, done, put the password, welcome done, login done, home. Now we can see welcome done, blah blah blah, a recipe done with a joy. So that's exactly how you use forms in React. It's very easy to do, almost exactly like HTML, just that you now have to use you have to put the variables, you have to put the values in your form as state, and then you change them using set state, and then you have to have an onSubmit function. That's how it's done. That's all the content we have for today. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you understood the concepts that I explained in this video. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Stay tuned to learn how to code from Wazobia Code.